Today I'm going to walk through some of the best practices in the setup for building character interactions and working with the templates in Storyline. If you've worked in PowerPoint before, some of this will be familiar, but some of it is a little bit different. So if you haven't already watched the intro video, you should watch that because it shows you a little bit about what the functionality is. And here I'll go ahead and show you guys how to do the setup. So basically, unlike PowerPoint where you have multiple slides for each of the feedback options, within Storyline you're working on a single slide and then dealing with layers. So every scenario, if you have a 4-choice scenario, you're going to basically have 5 different layers. And you can see your slide layers over here. So you have the base scenario where the questions are, and then each of the feedback slides is its own layer. And then what we do to get to a different layer is for each of these buttons here, or it could be an object with a trigger or a button. I've actually done objects with triggers. You can see the triggers here. So this is choice B. You'll see in the triggers, show layer B when the user clicks this button. So each one of these buttons will trigger the opening of the new layer, and then within a layer, that try again button again will have a trigger in it. You'll see the trigger on this, the try again button. You're going to hide that layer, and that'll bring you back to the base layer. So that's the basics of how it functions. I want to walk through a couple other things that I think are important. First is naming everything in your timeline. So you'll see down here you have the timeline, states, and notes. On the timeline, by naming all of these different objects on the screen, it's much easier to work with, especially when you're setting your triggers and all of that, and also naming your slides the right way. It makes it really easy then. You say, okay, if you know that this is choice A2, so that's 2, is going to take you to, and then if you know your slide layers are A, B, C, D, and you know the second one is B, it's just easier to work with the triggers and the layers. It's also good for doing layering within the slide, because you can control the layers by dragging and dropping anything here. One of the other things that I like to do is for each one of these buttons, it's actually just a rectangle with the rounded corners. You'll see that I added a couple of states. So there's a gradient in the normal state, and then we added a hover state. You'll see when I go back and forth here, the option B changes. Basically, I took the gradient and just flipped it upside down, and that's a nice subtle effect for when you're hovering over, so that the user knows that that might be something that's clickable. One of the other things that I found was that working with the text boxes was easier. So let me go back to the timeline here. You'll see that I actually have text on top of each one of the rectangles. I just found that the formatting within the shape objects was a little more difficult to control. So by inserting a text box and putting it on top of on top of the shape, I had a lot more control. One other thing that I like to do is within the slide masters, that's where I'm controlling this background image, and that's really nice if you're doing multiple scenarios where you might change from office to office. You can then just go up here and select, and you'll see I actually have this background on all the slide masters, but you could do it on the sub master and have multiple options to choose from, so you could swap images out really quickly. Working with the characters, I actually have the characters with the pre-built states in here. So you'll see, Ian has 5 different states, and I have Lisa with 5 different states here. And what's nice about doing it this way is you can then make the triggers control what the character does. So you'll see, change when choice A4 is clicked on, change the state of Ian to thumbs up when that's the right answer. So that's one way to do it. You can also do it another way, which is inserting the individual image on the layers, and it's just a personal preference. I like having the triggers. It's a neat way to work, but you could go in and insert an image there. So I could just insert a picture and insert him here, and he'd show up. So those are some of the basics. I'll show you more in the next lesson on how to actually build out new scenarios within this.